On November 8th, in the United States District Court, Middle District of Florida, the Tampa Division, there was a hearing, a very important hearing that was between Samantha Markle against Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle, we all know, who is the wife of Prince Harry, and Samantha Markle actually sued Meghan Markle for defamation. And this has been going on for a while. We're going to explain everything that went on up to this point, but this hearing just occurred, and the judge is taking this motion under advisement. We're going to be getting into all the details in just 1 minute. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe, like the video so we can continue going and bringing this analysis to you and to other people. So what we have in this case is the following. First, you have to understand a little bit how lawsuits work. Okay, when you file a lawsuit, when a plaintiff is filing a lawsuit, and this is a civil case that Samantha Markle is suing her sister or half-sister Meghan Markle for. And when you file a lawsuit as a plaintiff, so what you have to do is you have to list the allegations in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4. So number 1, you'll say the plaintiff's name is this. Number 2, you'll say where the plaintiff resides. Number 3, you'll say what the jurisdiction is. You'll go through the different numbers, and you have to number your complaint, and then you have to file that in a court. Then you have to serve that complaint on the defendant. So in this case, Samantha hired this law firm. They drew up a complaint. The complaint was for defamation, which we're going to jump into in just 1 second. And in that complaint, they listed all the reasons why they feel that Meghan defamed Samantha and why Samantha suffered damage because of it. Now, generally speaking, when a defendant receives a lawsuit, they have a certain amount of time to answer that complaint. They have to file what's called an answer. And that's when they go by paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, the same way the plaintiff laid it out in their complaint. They have to file an answer, 1, 2, 3, 4, answering each allegation. Do you admit? Do you deny? Do you not have enough information to admit or deny? So that's what essentially they're doing in the answer to the complaint. But there's also an opportunity, instead of filing an answer to a complaint, what you can do instead is file a motion to dismiss the complaint. And the reason why you would file a motion to dismiss the complaint is because, as the defendant, you don't feel that even looking at the complaint, that the plaintiff actually alleged a recognizable cause of action. There is no cause of action. You have to, as a plaintiff, give the court a basis for why you're able to sue this defendant. So you have to say what your basis is. Are you suing them in negligence? Are you suing them because they did an intentional tort on you? What's the reason why you're able to come into court based on the complaint to be able to drag this person into court with you? And what the defendant can do, and this happens very often, instead of filing an answer line by line, 1, 2, 3, denying or admitting, what they'll do is they'll just file a motion to dismiss the whole lawsuit because the plaintiff has not even stated a cause of action. They haven't even gotten it right in the complaint. Even if we would accept the allegations for what they say it is, they still haven't stated a valid cause of action. So that's a motion to dismiss that's sometimes filed. And that's what happened in this case. There was an initial motion, there was an initial complaint that was filed. Then there was the defense for Meghan Markle. They filed a motion to dismiss because the plaintiff has not even alleged a recognizable cause of action. And then what happens is the plaintiff has the opportunity to either respond to the motion to dismiss and explain to the court why they have stated a valid cause of action, or what they can do is they can amend the complaint. And amend the complaint just means they're going to change some things about the complaint. So for example, if the plaintiff puts out in their initial complaint, they feel that they stated a cause of action, the defendant says, no, you didn't state a cause of action. So let's just take defamation, for example, in this case. So they go through all the entire allegations. The plaintiff puts all the allegations down in the complaint. And then the defendant says, you even in the complaint, you haven't even said what the statement is. What the statement that you're alleging that this person put out that defamed your client, you didn't even say what the statement is. You didn't even allege that. So then what the plaintiff can do, instead of trying to respond and showing the court, why they don't have to do that, they can just amend the complaint. And in the amendment of the complaint, so the second filing of this complaint, they can say, oh yes, this was the statement that was made. And now that you say what the statement was made, now the defense cannot rely on their initial motion to dismiss your complaint. Now what they could do is that they can, instead of answering your amended complaint, they can again file a motion to dismiss your second amended complaint, your first amended complaint, which would be your second complaint. They could do that. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So to set the backdrop for what happened here. So you got the initial complaint that was filed. Meghan Markle's team filed a motion to dismiss the complaint because the plaintiff hasn't even alleged a recognizable, valid cause of action. And then the plaintiffs went and amended their complaint, and then they filed another motion to dismiss. And the plaintiff, Samantha Markle's lawyers, they filed a response to that motion to dismiss, and the judge put out an opinion. And in that opinion, what the judge basically said to the plaintiffs is, there's arguments going. I'm not going to go through the entire order, the opinion, what he said, but basically what he said is that we're going to give you one more chance. We're going to give the plaintiff one more chance to amend their complaint and actually allege a valid cause of action. So, cutting through all of the law and all the everything that he laid out in his opinion, essentially that's what happened at the end of the day. He said, we're going to give you one more shot at the apple. But he actually warned the plaintiff. He warned Samantha Markle's lawyers that if you don't get it right this time, if you don't actually allege a cause of action, meaning you can walk away now. This is what the judge told them. You can basically walk away now if you want. If you choose to file another amended complaint, which would be the third shot, three strikes and you're out, if you try this for the third time and you still fail, there may be what we call a Rule 11 sanctions, which is you can get sanctioned by the court for filing frivolous filings. So the court essentially warned the plaintiff, if you don't get it right this time and you don't allege a valid cause of action, I may impose sanctions on you. And that's not what any lawyer wants. So they had the choice either to walk away or to file another amended complaint. And guess what they did? They filed another amended complaint. So now we've got the initial complaint, the first motion to dismiss, then we have the first amended complaint, which is the second complaint. And now we have another motion to dismiss. And now we have the next amended complaint, which the plaintiffs actually called the third amended complaint, when really it's the second amended complaint. It's the third complaint, but you would call it the second amended complaint. Yet they call it the third amended complaint, which the defense team obviously had a fun time calling out that they mislabeled this a second amended complaint and called the third amended complaint. Okay, so now you've got this third amended complaint, and now what do you know? You don't have an answer. You have another motion to dismiss by the defense, by Meghan Markle's team, saying you still, even after three times, haven't stated a valid cause of action. And therefore, the court should just dismiss the entire case. So what is this all about? What does it all come down to? There's really a few different things it comes down to. One of it is based on a book, the book called Finding Freedom. And we have the Netflix series called Harry and Meghan, but also it comes down to the famous interview that Oprah Winfrey had with Meghan and Harry. And this is the clip that this lawsuit arose out of. Take a look.
This is a very different situation than my dad, right? When you talk about betrayal, betrayal comes from someone that you have a relationship with, right? I don't feel comfortable talking about people that I really don't know. But I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows. And I wished I had siblings. I would have loved to have had siblings. That's why I'm so excited to be pregnant, so that Archie has someone. It was really interesting the last time I saw her must have been at least 18, 19 years ago. And before that, 10 years before that.
So you all weren't close? You didn't grow up together?
No.
She doesn't really know you?
No, she changed her last name back to Markle I think she was in her early 50s at that time, only when I started dating Harry. So I think that says enough.
Okay, so obviously you can imagine that after that clip came out, it made Samantha not look so great, and that's why she filed this lawsuit. She filed the lawsuit based on those comments, and then they also allege, and we're not going to get into everything else that they allege. They allege that some of the claims on her book, Finding Freedom, and also the Netflix series Harry and Meghan, that they also argue there's a bunch of statements that were made in that film, that series, that was also defamatory to Samantha. Okay, but we're going to discuss the Oprah Winfrey interview because I think that that's really the main arguments here. So first we have to understand what defamation is. What exactly is defamation, and does this fit within the definition of defamation? So in Florida. This has been filed in Florida. So in Florida, there's 4 factors which would show that a statement does constitute defamation. And these are the 4 factors. Number 1, the defendant published a false statement. Now, what does it mean, published? Published can either mean that you actually said it, you posted it yourself, you wrote it, or you said it. That's number 1. It's a false statement that you published either by writing or by saying it, or by allowing other people to write it or say it, and then you, as the publishing company, publish it. So that's another form of publishing, and that's their argument when it comes to the Netflix series. The plaintiff's arguments, Samantha's arguments are that really it was Harry and Meghan's actual production. They actually were in charge of the production of that video, of that series, and therefore they're responsible for what came out in that series. Okay, so that's their argument when it comes to that. But this interview with Oprah was actually the words that Meghan spoke on national television to 50 million people or something like that. So it's much more easier to get into the door for that. So number 1, again, the defendant published a false statement. Number 2, about the plaintiff. So obviously it has to be a statement that's about the plaintiff. Number 3, to a third party. So in this case, to a third party would be to national television. Number 4, or to Oprah or to all the millions of people that are watching. Number 4, the falsity of the statement caused the injury to plaintiff. So it has to that statement caused injury to the plaintiff. So let's take an example that happened, recently within the past few years. We know we had the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, and in that case, Johnny Depp was alleging that the statement that was published by Amber Heard caused him to lose on all of these opportunities as an actor, and that caused him losses of millions and millions of dollars. So what are the losses that were caused, that are being alleged that Samantha suffered? So some of the losses that they say is that she had this book herself, and these statements that were made by Meghan hurt her sales and things like that. And also there's other mental anguish and emotional distress, things like that can also be considered damages, perhaps. So those are 3 things. Those are the 4 factors. But really, the main question that this motion surrounds is the first prong, the first factor, which the defendant published a false statement. So, were any of those statements false? So number 1, you have to determine whether the statement was false. If the statement was technically true, even though it portrays you in a bad light, and maybe you could have added context, or maybe you could have added information that would have made the person look better, but if you just look at that statement alone, if that statement is technically true, right? For example, you have a person who ran a red light, but he did so because he was trying to save somebody from dying, let's say. Now, if I say that person ran a red light, and I don't tell you that he ran a red light because he was trying to save another person from dying, that's technically true. It's true that he ran a red light. Now, should I have said more for the context? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, it's true that statement's true. So that's one of the arguments that they make here, is that the statements, even when looking at it, even if it makes Samantha look bad, if the statements are technically true and there's no more context added to the statement, it's still not going to be considered defamation. And that's part of the argument that the defense is making here. If you take these statements, they're either true or substantially true. Substantially true is another legal argument that they can make, which is that if a statement is mostly true, the gist of the statement is true, but there may be 1 or 2 little details that I didn't get actually correct. If it's substantially true, then it also does not constitute defamation. The statement has to be clearly false. So that's their first argument that they're making here. And the second argument that they're making is that really these aren't facts that are being stated, these are opinions. Okay? Now, when you get to this difference between what a fact is and what an opinion is, it's not as simple as it may sound. Now, obviously, if I say to you, my opinion is that Michael Jordan was better than Kobe Bryant, right? Then I can be telling you that that's my opinion, and I say it very clearly. Now, what about if I say to you, without the preface that this is my opinion? Let's say I say to you, I am going to tell you a fact. Michael Jordan was better than Kobe Bryant. And I say it as a fact. And I say fact 100 times while I'm saying, I'm going to tell you a fact, and the fact of the matter is, and this is the fact, and this is the fact, Michael Jordan is better or was better than Kobe Bryant. Now, it's still an opinion because it's still obviously my personal opinion. I'm not stating it as a fact. Can you verify this by any way? Well, some people say, yeah, well, if you look at the stats and you look at the championships won and you look at the teams that they face off against, you know what? That's all opinion. At the end of the day, it's opinion because it's very hard to verify that that is a fact or not. So if it's hard to verify and it's not clearly it's a fact, it's very possible that that statement will be considered an opinion. Okay, so let's take these statements that were made in the Oprah Winfrey interview and let's discuss whether you feel that these are opinions or facts. And please let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that these statements that Meghan made are her stating a fact, or is it that she is really just saying her opinion? So number one, she says, betrayal comes from someone that you have a relationship with. That's what she was saying. And she was saying that she never had a relationship or she doesn't have a relationship with Samantha. Right? Now, part of the plaintiff's argument is that they had an extensive relationship. Samantha took care of Meghan and they used to drive together. And they used to drive together to her acting classes. And she was such a big fan of hers and she was such a supportive of Meghan's actions and they really had a relationship. But what does it mean that when I say I had a relationship with somebody? Everyone can define relationship differently. Some people will say, well, I have a relationship with that person because I speak to him once a year. Or I have a relationship with that person because we celebrate holidays together. Or I can have a relationship with somebody that and because I go out to eat with them once a week. But everybody can have a different idea of what a relationship is. So really, there's a strong argument to be made that this statement is not a fact. She's not stating it as a fact. This is Meghan's opinion that, in her opinion, she didn't feel like she had a relationship with her. So that's another argument to be made. You let me know what you feel. Number two, I grew up as an only child, and I wished I had siblings. Now, is that a fact? At the end of the day, she had siblings, Samantha. So what do you mean you grew up as an only child? Are you stating a fact? Well, technically, the argument is that, no, you're not stating a fact. You're telling us how you felt. I felt that I grew up as an only child. Now, you didn't preface it by saying, this is how I feel, but like we spoke about before, you don't have to necessarily preface with what your opinion is going to be and exclude it as just an opinion. You can be stating something which sounds like a fact, but really, it's your opinion. So saying, I grew up as an only child could be how she felt. This is how I felt. I did feel like I grew up as an only child. And there's a very, very wide age gap between Meghan and Samantha. Samantha was like 17, 18 years older than her. So Meghan could be saying, look, if you look at the context of what was going on, I did feel like an only child. So that could be argued as an opinion also. Then she says the following. The last time I saw her must have been at least 18, 19 years ago, and before that, 10 years before that. So did she see her 18, 19 years ago? Well, it was clear that they didn't really see each other a lot. At some point in their life, they didn't see each other a lot. So maybe in the beginning when Meghan was growing up, but that's not what she was talking about. She was 18, 19 years. So how much did they see each other? Is it substantially true? And even if they spoke on the phone, which is some of the arguments that they make, even if they spoke on the phone, it's still, she's saying the correct thing. I haven't seen her. I didn't say I didn't speak to her. So even though you're painting her in a bad light, it could be they speak every day. That's what the defense says. They could be speaking every day. But her statement was the last time I saw her must have been 18, 19 years ago. So that was similar to the case we spoke about where somebody says that I saw the guy ran a red light and they didn't also tell you that he went to go save somebody. Now, there's another part that Samantha changed her surname back to Markle when Meghan started dating Prince Harry. She changed her name back to Markle. So is that true or not? Well, at some point, she did start exclusively using her name Markle. Now, the plaintiffs agree that she did use her name Markle interchangeably before Meghan started dating Prince Harry, and sometime after she was dating Prince Harry, she did change her name to Markle and not use her other name. So that could also technically be true. It may not be so nice to say, but it certainly can be substantially true. So that's another argument that they make. So what is the plaintiff really going to argue back in this? When you're, it's pretty. Some of these arguments are pretty solid, I would think, that these are really not stating it as facts, but it's really opinion. Well, there's another cause of action. Okay, now they did plead that that defamation. They feel that these statements alone do constitute defamation, and they do constitute facts. And you can let me know again in the comments what you feel. But here's the next question. The next question is that the plaintiffs argue that actually this is defamation by implication. So there's a second cause of action. which is again a little bit harder to wrap your head around. And this is why lawyers get paid the big bucks. But and this is what we get to argue all the time, because when you make these gray type of areas, that's where you can make arguments. Defamation is pretty clear, as we said. There's 4 factors in defamation. But what about defamation by implication? Defamation by implication is a little more nuanced, and that is that I may be saying things that maybe are substantially true or technically true, but when I say all these statements in a certain context, and the context, the implication that I'm trying to make here, and the implication I'm trying to get across is that this person is a no good piece of garbage. So then, by implication, even though technically in the statements you're not defaming the person, but you're still by implication defaming the person, that can also constitute defamation. It's called defamation by implication. So that's another argument the plaintiffs are making in this case, that if you look at the entirety of the interview, what Meghan is trying to get across, even if each statement technically is true or is just an opinion, the implication of that interview is that Samantha was trying to make money off of the Markle name because she got engaged to Prince Harry. And they didn't really have any sort of relationship before, and this is all just a money grab, a way for Samantha to go and make publicity, to be able to make money, to be able to use that Markle name. And that's the implication for those statements. And that's part of the argument that they make. Now, the defense has some arguments that no, you can't just, if you look at the context, that's not what she was saying at all. She was just saying, she's just talking about her the way that she grew up, and she's giving her opinion about how she felt, and she wasn't really trying to imply anything. She was just saying how she felt, without trying, with any implication. So that's the argument that they'll be making. Now, this is what the judge now, and again, there's a lot of law that goes into a lot of case law. We're not going to bore you with all that lawyer stuff. But there's a lot of case law that talk about defamation by implication, and they try to compare and contrast and things like that. That's what lawyers get paid to do. So that's what they did, and that's what they filed in front of the judge. But that's essentially the two arguments that the two arguments that can be made, and this defamation by implication argument that can be made. So let me know what you feel. Is this defamation? Is this defamation by implication? Either it's just opinions. Should we leave Meghan alone or not? That is the question. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe, like the video so we can continue growing. Thank you. That's all for today.